We are going to discuss about TypeScript types. Okay, so TypeScript has several built-in types, and we can see all these types here, which I mentioned, like number, string, boolean, any, void, null, undefined, and so on. So how we will follow this? Firstly, I will explain primitive types, primitive types part, this one actually, till null. Okay, and in second video I will explain about object types till object. Okay, and in third video I will explain about top types like unknown, any, and in bottom types like array. So let's start with it. Firstly, let's understand primitive types. Okay, so primitive types, so firstly I will tell about the boolean thing. So let's start with boolean. So boolean is a primitive data type in TypeScript. One more thing I want to tell, like if you want to deep dive about the definition, primitive types or object types, so you should definitely uh, go to documentation for primitive types. You can just find out what's the meaning of primitive types in JavaScript and what's the meaning of object types in JavaScript, and then you can understand more about it. But here we are seeing the type thing and how we basically use in TypeScript. So I'm not going deep dive in JavaScript part, but definitely I will cover that in JavaScript tutorial. So now let's move. We are having boolean. So boolean is a primitive data type in TypeScript that represents a boolean value. Okay, either true or false. So let's take an example. Let is true, then define the type boolean, and let's take true. Okay, now let's write is false boolean is equal to false. Okay, so let's console the output is true, console is false. Okay, now run it. We can see the output true and false. So this is boolean type. Now let's move to next primitive type, that is number. So number is also a primitive data type in TypeScript that represents numeric values. Okay, it includes both integer and floating point number. So let's go with that example. Let int value, right? Let int value is equal to some integer 42, and let float value is equal to some floating point number 3.14. Let's write this, and now here let's define its type, that is number, and here also let's define its type, that is number only. Okay, so this is about, we can console the output also if you want, else just I'm explaining the thing, and definitely you can console it out and you can see the output. Okay, so this is about what we were seeing. This is about number, second one. Now let's go with string. So string is also a primitive data type in TypeScript that represents textual data. Okay, so textual data basically means what? Let's write string example. Let name is equal to some name, hello John, name hello. Okay, now let's define its type, its string. Okay, so this is about, let's console the output also, name hello. Okay, so this is primitive, this is string. Now let's go with void thing. So we are having inside primitive type we are having void, then null, then undefined, and null. Okay, so let's go with void. So what's the meaning of void? Firstly, let's understand it. Void represents the written value of a function which don't return a value. Okay, I think you didn't understand, so let me explain you more deeply. Like we are having a function. Okay, let's write log some messages. Okay, and here I am not returning anything, I'm just logging the message. Okay, hello, and let's call this log message. Okay, and let's run this. So here we can see hello, name hello, we can see the message, but what's the written value of this particular function? So if I'm not mentioning anything, so its written value is void, and intentionally also I can do that. How I can do that? I can mention here something like this, void. It means this function is not returning anything. Here we are not returning anything, we are just consoling the output, right? We are consoling name hello, okay? If I am not returning anything, so what I can do, I can mention it here void, that this function is not returning anything. And if I mention void and if I am trying to return something, let's try that, return anything like this. So we can see that what it's saying, the string is not assignable to type void, because here I have already mentioned now that this function is not returning anything, it's void, okay, it's empty, we can say. So this is about void. Now let's go with if I take one more example. Yeah, I already told na, here we can see the output, and here we can see the error, okay. Okay, now go with undefined and null. Okay, this is interesting one. Okay, we will see that on TypeScript compiler. Okay, so firstly let's understand, like we are having undefined and null in JavaScript. JavaScript has two primitive values used to signal absent or uninitialized value. Okay, null basically means absent and undefined basically means uninitialized. Okay, this is in terms of JavaScript. Definitely we will look into JavaScript tutorial, but now as we are seeing the TypeScript thing, so I will explain you in TypeScript way also. So TypeScript has two corresponding types by the same name, as I told, null and undefined. Okay, how these types behave depends on, see, how these types behave like null and undefined depends on this strict mode. If I am enabling this strict mode, like here I wrote that strict is true, it means I am saying that TypeScript should check for null and undefined. If I am mentioning any value that is undefined or null, and if this strict mode is on, so definitely TypeScript will not allow us to do that. And this is recommendation, and TypeScript also recommend that we must add this strict true. We can do one more thing, like if I am not mentioning this now, like strict true, what we can do, we can write strict null check. Strict null checks, basically it will check for null and it will check for undefined. I hope you are understanding what I am trying to say. See, if I am absenting this like strict true, I am removing this. Okay, extra optional property type, I am removing that also. And now let's try to write some code here. Let name string. Okay, and now let's write name is equal to null. Okay, and name is equal to undefined. Okay, as we can see that here what I have done, I have just removed that strict check. I am not using, basically it means, and here I wrote the code, and let's console the thing also. Sorry, console here. Console name and copy this console name. Okay, that's fine, we are consoling the name only, no? And now let's run this. Okay, it's running here, and we can see the output here. We can see that it's not throwing any error. Instead of writing name is null and name is undefined, it's not throwing any error. Okay, now let's run in JS also. Okay, node index.js, we can see that it's showing undefined. So what we should do, definitely we should allow that it should check a strict thing, like it should check for null and undefined. If we are doing that thing, so this should definitely not allow to do that. So if I'm just using strict as true, so what it will do, here we can see that it's not allowing me to write the code also, like type null is not assignable to type string, and again here also we can see that undefined is not assignable to type string. So I hope you understand that what's the benefit of allowing strict null check as true basically. Let's see one more example, interesting example. Like here inside compiler option we can write this also, like strict null check true, and we should allow this also. I think some spelling mistake inside compiler option, double quotes. Okay, this is cool. Fine, we wrote in double quotes now. Okay, fine. Now here I wrote this, and let's remove this. Again we can see that it's showing that we are doing same mistake, like null is not assignable to type string, and again null is undefined is not assignable to type string. So this is about it. I hope you understood about primitive types. Till null I have explained. In next video we will see about object types. Thank you.